Folks, welcome into another edition of SportsBookReview.com's Roundtable Edition videos. Boy, we got an esteemed panel for you today. You know what we're talking about today, guys? The NBA. We've done some videos already on the NBA. We're waiting for it to come back. It doesn't mean it's going to start right away, but we can factor in a few things down the line. Let me bring in my esteemed panel, Jay Money, Junior Browne, and Jeff Nadeau. Look, the players want to get back on the court. Us as sports fans want to see them get back on the court. Us as handicappers need them back on the court. If we take a look at one NBA player recently, J.J. Redick, as a player, I want to finish the season, whatever form or shape it is. The Pelicans want to have some sort of regular season that gives us a chance to get the 8th seed and make the playoffs. Pretty soon, these players are going to get itchy at home here, Jay. I'm going to bring you in first. What gives? When can we get back? But also, what's the mindset of some of these athletes out there sitting around waiting but not really seeing a finish line right now?
Man, they feel exactly just like me trying to get back in the gym. I mean, you just at the house. It's only so much working out you can do at the house. You're trying to get back in the gym, trying to, even though they have a court at the house, they trying to go and play with other people play. You know what I'm saying? Some pickup basketball, 5-on-5, run full court, man. So they're ready to get back out there and, you know what I'm saying, play, get back in the gym, all that, man. I'm watching players on Snapchat, man. They at the house bored, playing video games, doing pretty much the same thing we doing, but doing a little working out. But I'm pretty sure they're ready to get back on the court, man. Just I play a little basketball myself, man. I know I'm ready to get back out there as well. But I'm trying to stay in 6 feet from everybody, man. I'm trying to stay safe out here too.
No, I certainly hear you there. I want to bring you in next here, Junior. Talk about some of this because professional athletes, they're used to being in a regimen, right? They can have 2 to 3 personal trainers. They're working out each and every day. Now that sort of shuts down. Now we see the bigger players like LeBron James have their own gyms, probably have their own in-house personal trainers, have full courts that they have access to. But you still don't get that real life camaraderie where you got the team around, you got the coaches around you, you're building through, you're having, at night you're going out to dinner, seeing how things are going. That's not taking place right now. Talk about, because when you just get started up again, a lot of these people, in the same way it goes for the NFL, the NHL, or whatever it will be with soccer, you can't just flip the switch and say, boy, we're ready to get back out here. Remember how the Lakers were playing really well? You can't just snap that finger and get it all back here. Talk about some of the concerns that you might have with the NBA starting back up and just some of these players not being in game shape right away, but asked to still answer that bell.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. No matter what discipline you practice, you're not going to take an extended period of time off and come back the same. That's just pretty obvious, right? But that extends to every level. That's not just for professionals. Not to use myself as an example, but I coach a high school team. My kids come back from Christmas break. They don't play basketball for like 2 weeks. It looks like they've never touched a ball in their lives. So no matter what level you play on, you have to have consistency to be able to perform at your best. So that being said, you mentioned LeBron James, and he's a perfect example. We know LeBron James is staying in shape because that's his life. Basketball is his life. He's dedicated himself to the sport, which is why he's one of the greatest. Do we know that about 95% of the rest of the league? Not really too sure about that. So it's going to be interesting to see when they come back. Like we mentioned on the last time that we sat down, they're probably going to have to play at least a couple of games before they start the playoffs, or else the playoffs are going to be really ugly.
Jeff, I want to bring you in here. We're going to talk some NBA because we're Philly guys, right? We like to watch the Sixers and focus in. The one thing that we always saw Joel Embiid, even during the season, when he misses a game or two, coming back out of shape, seeing him at Shake Shack, knocking down some burgers and some fries. Talk about from a conditioning aspect from some of these guys that are saying, hey, I use basketball just to keep in shape. Now they're going to be away from the gyms 2, 3, maybe even a month or longer at this time. Ben Simmons was injured. Now he's going to get some time of reprieve. But also just the facts of guys like Joel Embiid, they can't just come back, or he just can't come back and say, hey, you know what? I feel good. Let's see what this guy's weight is, Jeff. It's crazy to look at when this is coming back and some of these players who probably will be out of shape when it starts.
And I mean, that's the interesting, Donnie. We can hear J.J. Redick, talk about his fantasies of coming back to the NBA, but not only is it a logistical nightmare to create the season again, but as you said, I mean, the conditional aspects are possibly more concerning. I mean, the average NBA player, Donnie, makes $7.5 million a year. That's a lot of money to all of us. But at the end of the day, after you pay everybody involved with your life, you pay taxes. None of these people live in mansions with huge courts and weight rooms and things like that. You also have to wonder, Jay mentioned so a lot of these guys just sitting around playing video games. You don't have the chef to make you food every day. During lockouts, you could go to the gym and work out. None of that stuff is happening right now. It's a concern. And I think a lot of people just assume, as Junior said, that we're just going to flick around, flip our wrists, and the season's going to come back, and everyone's going to be back to full strength. I mean, you mentioned some of these players can't even keep their diets correct during the season, so it's a concerning thought. I mean, this is a logistical nightmare. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm one to say I think that the fantasy of the season coming back and everything being fine is delusional, frankly.
No, it's really interesting because again, I've had optimism over the past couple weeks, but we see now the depth of what's actually taking place and the logistics going on. We've even had other videos which we'll get down the line where arenas might not be available when the NBA wants to say, hey, let's get our playoffs or regular season go. Jay, I want to bring you back in and just talk some things that are going on now is what you hear out here because hey, the Toronto Raptors obviously winning a basketball championship last year, moving forward this year again another player, but we're seeing their mayor come out and say, hey, look. Till June 30th. A lot of things called off. You can't get any new permits, public events of any certain amount of people can't go on. So that means that, hey, at least in the city of Toronto, we're probably not going to have any fans in the stands if we do at all, but see how further that goes down the line. Because if you're an NBA team like the Toronto Raptors, it's not fair if they say, hey, Oklahoma City, we're open for business, or LA, we're open for business, Dallas, we're open for business. Everybody has to be included in this, but it's interesting just to see like some of these cities that operate individually because being in Canada, being in the United States, every single city and every single state looks like they're operating under different terms. Might be hard for the NBA to come back, but Toronto is saying, hey, we might have to be cool at least through June, which is crazy, Jay.
Yeah, that is pretty tough. I saw a couple of hockey players from Ottawa that had or whatever. But one thing positive to say from that one positive thing for me seeing that we saw that 4 Nets players had it. We saw that some Lakers players got tested. All of these players, the players that did had Christian Wood, Rudy Gobert, and Donovan Mitchell, all have been cleared of it. So we're seeing players at least being started to be cleared of it. I mean, I feel like that's at least a positive sign. Obviously Toronto, that's tough. Maybe they could find an arena in US to play, but if that's just the only team, say if players are starting to get cleared of this virus, I think maybe they could try to maybe move towards, maybe playing games without fans, maybe, but at least if the players are starting to recover from this virus, I think that's at least a positive sign going forward, at least from what I'm hearing. Obviously, more cases are still popping up out here, but as far as right now, I think that's positive with some of the NBA players, a lot of them, like I say, all of the Nets players, they say that everyone's free, symptom free. So I think that's a good sign as we sit right now.
Yeah, Junior, it's interesting to bring up because I always like to look at the business aspect as well and say, professional athletes don't really live that real life that most of us our daily struggles. But last week, let's just say with the COVID-19 pops up and most people are quarantined to their home or staying home for 5 or 6 days, the bills don't really kick in until the final or the next month, should we say, when the rent comes due, the car payment comes due. NBA players are the same. They got paid on the 1st and maybe they're saying, hey, it's nice to get this little break off. We're looking to get back. But once those checks stop coming on the 15th of the month, that puts pressure on both the owners and the players to get back. Talk a little bit maybe from a perspective of just living that day-to-day life saying, hey, the checks aren't coming in, and now it looks to see maybe the COVID curve is starting to come down and the antsiness of the NBA players and the owners to get back on the court right away. Talk about some of those factors that might creep in here, Junior.
Well, you just mentioned something pretty relevant, right? So in the United States, as you guys well know, since you guys are, all 3 of you are down there, over 6 million people just applied for assistance from the government.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's more than most countries have. That's more than the population of most countries. So the situation is as serious as it's ever going to get. The numbers in Canada aren't as bad, but they're going to be similar in terms of percentage. Listen, everyone is struggling. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are struggling for money. Now, we think of NBA players as millionaires. Oh, they can cope. But the more money you make, the more expensive your tastes are, right? So they got bills to pay just like everybody else. And we also forget that the majority of players aren't balling like LeBron and these guys that are making 20, 30 plus million a year. So the reality is most of these guys got to get back and start making checks. The other thing that you guys mentioned with Toronto, I really think that Toronto's going to keep in step with the rest of the North American sports franchises. And I only say that because, being up here in Canada, I used to live in Toronto for 10 years. Toronto's a proper sports town. People will riot in the streets if the rest of the leagues are trying to play and the Toronto teams are not. I'm not joking. Like, look, Toronto's got an MLS team, an NBA team, an NHL team, and a Major League Baseball team. They're easily in the top 10 in attendance every single year. Until I lived in Toronto, I didn't really understand that. Even the goddamn Toronto Argonauts be selling out games. Like, people in Toronto need their sports. They want their sports. If the leagues say they're back on, trust me, they will play because they've already been saying that that ban doesn't extend to the professional franchises, which is kind of a dicey situation because you're saying everyone else has to live by one set of rules, but these guys don't. That's going to get a bit tricky, but I think overall, the spirit of that city, they want sports. They need sports. They're in. You don't got to worry about Toronto.
It's a great point you bring up, Junior, because the tea leaves yesterday came out when the actual mayor said, hey, you know what, everything's going to be called off till 6:30. And then you saw the tweets come out like, hey, looks like Toronto, looks like the Raptors are out of the playoffs. Maple Leafs aren't going in. They actually had to refine that a little bit later in the day and say, hey, no, this could change. This is fluid and not necessarily has to do with professional sports. So Toronto, absolutely a big sports town. Jeff, talk about another big sports town, Philadelphia. Just us being here. And again, being in the industry, everybody is losing paychecks, trying to come back. But also talk about the Philadelphia 76ers for a moment, because I know you were live on this right away when the Sixers and their ownership thought it was a really nice time to come out and say, you know what, we're all billionaires here, but guess what's going to happen?
Well,
I'm going to cut some payroll here from the front office and get back to it. And then Joel Embiid says, whoa, 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 I'll pay the rest of it. And a huge Twitter storm followed right after that, Jeff.
Well, good for him for bringing that to light, making sure he goes out and does that. Look, billionaires aren't billionaires because they're compassionate people, Donnie. At the end of the day, they do what they have to do, whether that means stepping over people or not. But I want to get back to just one thing that Junior was saying. Listen, there's absolutely no chance that a team is left out if the league starts. There's zero chance that's going to happen. We need to come to the realization here, folks, that the season is not going to continue arena to arena. It's either you have it all in one arena or you don't have it at all. It's a logistical nightmare. There's so many things that go into this. Obviously, the physical toll that we talked about. We're talking about the logistics. We're talking about people that are, this country is a public health crisis right now. There's no way you can feasibly play games and travel and do all this different stuff. Plus, we have to look at the contract end of it here. I mean, at the end of the day, the CBA and the players have to agree on something. When you start to get to points where you're not paying people, and then there are certain mandates in the CBA where if things don't happen, players will have to obviously not get paid, and they have to, in certain aspects, is pay that money back. I mean, there's just so many things that go into this. I got to be honest. If you ask me right now, does the season continue? I know the NBA are smart people. Adam Silver's a smart guy, but there's a lot of stuff you got to look into here. And as far as, that happening, I find it hard to believe. But yeah, Toronto putting things off to the 30th, that seemed a bit premature to me. I mean, it's April 1st. I mean, in 3 months, 2 months, I mean, the world could be a totally different place. Look how quickly this has all happened. It could quickly just dissipate and change. To put stuff off that long seems a bit premature to me.
Let's go a little bit of NBA commissioner here, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this video talking about, Jay, I'm going to bring you back in here. How do we finish the season, and what formats do we go with? And again, this doesn't have to all make logistical sense, because we were talking about Jay Williams here saying he has the perfect example. Let's get 2 Carnival cruise ships, one for the Eastern Conference, one for the Western Conference, quarantine everybody, and play the NBA that way, which was hilarious to watch. Now, Jay, you're the commissioner. How do you proceed, and how should the season finish under your leadership?
That's not a bad idea, man. It's not. I can't say, man. I hadn't thought of that. I wouldn't be opposed of it, man. If everybody clear, hey, your temperature too high, you don't get your ass on the boat, man. They got courts on there, but no, I can't say in the last video, Junior made a good point that having a, come back and having a couple of games would be nice. Jeff makes a damn good point as well. It is a little bit delusional for us to think everything will go back to normal. I'm trying to keep positive and try to keep the positive vibes. Personally, what I would do, I would just take the teams right now that's in the playoffs. I know it's pretty tough to do, but if everything did go back, and what I would do 1 through 8 right now, through the games that we played through regular season, in the first couple of series would probably play best of 3 or best of 5, and then obviously the conference final is going to be a best of 7 and best of what's called. Give them maybe a couple of weeks to practice, like they do with the Super Bowl. Give them a couple of weeks to get in shape or something. I know the time is going to be a crunch, but a week or something to practice up and everything and get them boys ready. But I think if you made the 1 through 8 with the games played so far through the regular season, teams like the Warriors don't want to come back and play games. It's just that simple. They probably are. They're going to be ready to be on vacations. That simple. So that's what I would do.
Everything is on the table here, Junior. Put on your ski cap here and get after it. How do we finish this season? And should we expand the playoffs to every team? Say, hey, let's give the teams that are out of it a 1-game playoff to try to get in the playoffs. Or you just cut it off 1 through 8 and say, let's get busy. Let's run through these playoffs.
I'll tell you what, whoever's making this decision definitely needs a raise already because there's so many different scenarios that you could go through that people will shoot down. In my opinion, you can't possibly start playing playoff games without a couple of weeks of practice plus regular season games. Now, do those regular season games, if they have them, affect the standings as is? That kind of wouldn't make sense either because it's not the same. It's almost not even the same season, right? If you look at some of these the playoff races in the conferences, they're separated by a game or two up and down the line. So it's how do they figure? I tell you what, though, Jeff made a good point that I had not thought of. If they do come back, it would serve them best to pick, let's just say, 5 locations. In the West Coast, it's a bit easier because California takes up most of the coast. Take 2 arenas in California, an arena in New York, an arena in Philly, maybe one in Chicago, and those are the 5 sites of the NBA playoffs. It's you're probably going to have to play it in empty stadiums anyway, so the location kind of doesn't matter at that point. But the more travel, the less possible or feasible this whole thing is because none of us are doctors, and I like that none of us are going into detail about the virus itself. But let's just be realistic. When they start telling us we can go back to normal life, the virus is not going to be completely gone out of the population, especially since we know that it takes almost 2 weeks for people to show symptoms. So sick people are going to go back into the general population, and there could be a second wave of this thing for all we know. So if the NBA is going to try and play games and have people move around, Jeff is 100% right. It's in their best interest to limit the amount of movement they have. And in terms of answering your question, I think they're going to have to go 3 games first round, possibly 3 to 5 games second round. But you can't cheat us out of 7 games in the conference finals and the NBA finals if you want to have a proper champion, in my opinion.
Jeff, how do we close this down? What could be, I mean, we're not going to be perfect. It's not going to be fair all the way around, but what's your best case scenario on an NFL playoff structure here to crown a champion?
I think that the only feasible strategy would be one city. You take every team that's involved in the playoffs. I agree with Jay Money. Look, the thought of like bringing back the Knicks and the Warriors to play games it's stupid and doesn't make any sense. They're not going to the playoffs anyway. To involve them is dumb. Listen, take the playoff teams. This is the situation you have to do. Take all the playoff teams. You go to one city, Las Vegas, okay? You put every player in the Mandalay Bay. I've seen this actually talked about. Someone brought this up. Put everybody in the Mandalay Bay, run a showcase, run some kind of system through there. Nobody leaves the premises. No one comes in. The only people that are there are the players and people that are involved with the teams. You play it at one location. You cannot travel whatsoever other than going to Las Vegas. There can't be, hey, we start in Chicago and then we go to Washington, D.C. It will never work. Listen, I know people want to be positive, and I want to be positive too, but I just know how these leagues work. I know how the public health works. I don't know how it would ever work. I want the season to start. And then what do you do with like the NBA draft? When does that happen? Then you have a season starting again in October. How does that happen? I really believe at the end of the day, they're just going to say, look, we're going to end it like college basketball. As much as I don't want to hear that, we're going to end it. We're just going to have a no champion this year, and we're going to start it back up in November and be feasibly ready for it. But the only thing you could do is put everyone in one city, one hotel. Mandalay Bay would be big enough to do it and run it from there.
At this point, nobody's answer is wrong, but these are the guys you want to get back with when you're talking NBA because we want the season to continue. For all that and more, always check out sportsbookreview.com for all your NBA topics. I want to thank Jay Money, Junior Browne, and Jeff Nadu for coming on the show with me, Donnie Seymour. Check out everything at sportsbookreview.com. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Roundtable.